Hi guys, thanks for joining me on Making with Marilyn. On today's video, I'm going to give these 3 canisters a little facelift. Even though these are tucked away in a cabinet, I want to update the labels that I have on these. I made these labels a few years ago just on an old-fashioned label maker. When Cricut came out with the Joy, they came out with this really excellent writable vinyl. If you use this in your Joy, it's a smart product, so you don't have to use a mat. But today, I'm going to show you how to use this in your Cricut Maker. So if you don't have the Joy, but you have one of the other machines, stay tuned and you'll see how it's done. Before I move on to the design, if you like today's video or other content and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And if you do, tap that bell and let YouTube know that you want to be notified when I upload all new content. Now let's look at the design. Now that I'm in Cricut Design Space, I can go ahead and start my design. I'm going to start by clicking on Shapes, and I'll get a square. Now I'm going to use a second square, and I'll show you why here in just a minute, so I'll go ahead and hit Duplicate. So the square on my right, that's going to be my label. I want to change it white, and then I want to change the size of it. I'll unlock the proportions, which I can do here or here. And then I want my label to be 3 inches wide, and I want it to be 2 1/4 inches tall. So I'll enter those measurements in the width and the height. Now I want the corners knocked off of this. Let me go ahead and lock that. So I'm going to use the second square to do that. I'll rotate it. So I'll go up here to the rotate area, get rid of the 0, and type in 45 degrees. So I've placed this behind my rectangle. It could be on top or on bottom, it wouldn't matter. And I think I want a little less of the corners clipped off. So right now, my square, or it looks like a diamond, is 4 1/2 inches wide, 4 1/2 inches tall. I'm going to change that to 4.6. The proportions are locked, so it'll change both the width and the height. Okay, so to get that perfectly where I want it, I'll select both items, click on Align, and center vertically and horizontally. Okay. Now that I have 2 items selected, I can use the slice function, and that's right down here on the bottom right. So I'll click on Slice. You can only slice 2 things at a time, or you can only have 2 items selected to slice or to use the slice. So I'll pull away the one I want to keep, and then I'll just delete everything else. Eventually, I'm going to need 2 more of these, so I'll duplicate twice, and I'll just move those out of the way. All right, let's blow our screen up a little bit, zoom in. I'm going to start with almond flour. So I'm going to click on Text, and then I want something other than Cricut Sans. I want one that is called Georgia something. Okay, Georgia Peach Sketch Font. And then I'll type in almond flour, hitting the return after the word almond, and here's what I have. Now you can see that's way too far apart, so I'll go up here and I'll start by decreasing my line space. And I'm just going to keep hitting that until I like the way it looks. Okay, that looks pretty good, -4.5. So on my next labels, I can just go up here and I can enter that. Now I want flour to be centered under almond, so I'll click on Alignment and Center. And then I want my letters just a little bit closer together. Okay, if there's some letters you don't like, what you can do is you can say ungroup, because not all fonts come together very well. So ungroup, and then you could select just one letter and move it over. Maybe I want to move the O and the N and the D just a little bit. I can do that. Okay, so now I want to group the top set and then separately the bottom set. And the reason I'm grouping them separately is now I can select both items, go back up here to align, and say center horizontally, and they should be perfect. Okay, so flower moved over just a bit. Now I want to group them as one unit, so I click on group while they're both selected. That way I can center the whole thing in the middle of my label. So now I'm going to select the words and the label and click click align, and then center horizontally and vertically. Okay, now sometimes when I do that, I don't like on the up and down axis where they put it. Usually it's centered well between the left and the right, but sometimes, let's say this word up here is really long and this one's short. You might want to move it down to have it balanced a little bit. In my case, where they put it was fine. So I'll click back. Now this next part is very important. If you're wanting these drawn on with a pen, you have to select your words and go up here and change it from cut to draw. Okay, now I can select both items and click attach. Let me show you what would happen if you didn't do that. Let me connect to my maker, and then I'll say make it. See how it just has the letters where it wants it, and it has the labels on a separate sheet? Let's cancel that out. I'm going to select everything, and I'll say attach. Now when I say make it, you see that the label is set up exactly the way it needs to be. Now, because this smart label paper is skinny and long, you will have to change where your items are positioned on your mat. Then before I hit make it, I'm going to go ahead and do my second and third label, and then I'll show you what settings to use. Okay, I have all three of my labels designed, so I'm going to click on make it. And because the Smart Label products have a little void in the left side of their roll, I'm going to go ahead and move this over just a little bit. And I'll show you what I mean when we turn the camera around. Now I'll click continue. I'm on my maker, so I'm going to browse, and I'm going to type in the word premium. And I just want to use this premium vinyl setting and click done. Now it wants me to use the 0.4 pin, but I've experimented with this and I really like how these turn out with the 1.0 pin. So I'm going to go ahead and use the 1.0 pin instead, and my fine point blade. Okay, before I load my material, I need to make sure my blade's clean. And then I need to insert my Cricut pen into this clamp here. So I'm just going to let it drop down in. Then I'm going to support the bottom side of the clamp and just click that down into place, and then shut this little lever. Now here's a close-up of what I'm using. It's just the Smart Label Writeable vinyl. This is nice and shiny, durable. The ink goes on this very, very nicely, and it's very hard to make it smudge. So it's considered smudge proof. If you work really hard, you can at first, but it dries quickly and it's very durable. Now what I wanted you to see is there's no vinyl for this first, I don't know, maybe a quarter or a third of an inch. So that's why I moved my design over to the 1/2 inch mark. Otherwise, you could just move this over to the left on your mat. Okay, those look really pretty, and let me show you on this top one I made a mistake. I have that outside perimeter set as draw instead of cut. And you know what? I really like that. So what you could do is you could have it set to draw, and then you could have another one set to cut. It would cut the whole thing out, but you'd also have this line drawn around it. So that's pretty cool. For my labels though, I really just want a very simple label, so I'll have to go back in, set this to cut, and redo this one label. Now when I was playing around with this design last night, I went ahead and made a label. Look how nice that looks. This is just an old piece of cardstock. See how it's kind of shiny? And it's really a nice texture. And then look, I'm pushing very, very hard. That is not smudging at all. So I'll go back, I'll fix my mistake, I'll recut the whey protein powder one, and then we'll add them to our canisters. Okay, so I got my last label corrected. First thing I want to do is go ahead and take my pen out and get it covered so I don't forget. Before I can put my labels on, I want to go ahead and take off these old labels and then clean the fronts of my canisters with some alcohol so that my new label will stick really well. Okay, now what I want to do is just weed away the extra material. And while I'm doing this, I will tell you that I experimented using transfer tape on this, and actually I was just using inexpensive contact paper, which isn't super sticky, and it does not work well on these. If you want to experiment, go for it. But what I wouldn't do is cover all my labels before experimenting and then finding out that you've ruined them all. Here, let me show you. The one I showed you earlier, I was experimenting with it, trying to use contact paper on it to see if I could use that to place it on my canisters. And first of all, it stuck so well that when you pull the contact paper away, let's say you get it on your canister, you're pulling your paper off or your contact paper off, it really wrinkles it because it adheres to it much too well. And then look, it also pulled off the lettering. So you might have some transfer paper that works well, maybe masking tape, I'm not sure. But for me, I'm just going to peel them off and then gently put them on there. And then if I need to smooth them down, I'll put a piece of wax paper over the front and rub on the top of it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the almond flour label. I don't really want to pick under this with my fingernail or a tool because I don't want to stretch it and get it misshapen. There we go. If you fold your paper back, eventually it'll pop up a little bit and you can grab it. Okay, there, I finally got it. Been fighting with this. Now, if you want these to be exact, what you could do is you could lay your canisters down side by side. And then you could just use some type of low-tack tape. In my case, I'm going to use this washi tape. Okay, that looks pretty straight and pretty level. Then I can just use that as a guide on where to put my label. Now this canister is so short that it's not going to line up with those two, but it doesn't have to. Just try to work it until you can kind of, like I'm getting my fingernail under it. Now I can go ahead and pull it up without damaging it. This might be out of the view of the camera, but I need to see this just a little bit better. Okay, I can see just a little bit of wrinkling above the Y. like when you get bubbles under vinyl. And here's the final product, guys. They are really cute. Now, I do have a few little bubbles here and there, and if you try to pull this back up, it really wrinkles it. So if you have any suggestions for me on how to lay these down without bubbles, please let me know in the comment section below. Thanks again for sticking it out to the end. Until the next video. Bye-bye.